Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Spooney Scrapbook. I'm Mike Kenichi. He's John Sponheimer. And, Coach, thank you for coming on again. We're going to discuss 1988, 1989. But before we do, Coach, I had to ask you I know you guys had your banquet recently to celebrate the 21st championship. Just talk about that a little bit. How did that go?
Michael, it was amazing. I had never been to the place in Cheshire. I believe it's Aftra or something like that. It was spectacular. Um, the rings the boys got America said he did a fantastic job for the town and the team. Were just unbelievable, and everyone had such a great time. It went as smooth as any bank we've ever had. So I was very pleased to be a part of it.
Yeah, the rings were really cool. Andy Mancini, who's a good friend of mine. I see him usually every Saturday, and he had the ring on. And I'll tell you, that was an unbelievable ring they gave those kids and coaches. I mean, it was really nice. And, that's the rewarding thing about when these kids win a championship. It's things like that because they'll have that forever.
They certainly will, and the rise really sparkled when they got to see him. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So, Coach, let's talk about 1988. Now, let me ask you this first, Coach. What was the expectation? I know the expectations are always to win a state title, but I mean, you come off a state championship in '87 after a disastrous 1986 season. You guys win the state title, only lose one game. I mean, did you have high expectations that this team could be special?
Yes, we did. We had a new quarterback in Keith Politowski, but we thought he'd be uh, very capable of taking over for James Lane. We had some excellent linemen. We had John Coughlin, one of our better linemen. We had a great player in David Venofrio. Kevin Sharkey was going to be an outstanding young sophomore. We had Chris Kinnebrew.
Yeah.
We had Ramondo Stallings had come out and was part of the team from the year before, and he really was coming into his own then. So we knew we had lost a great senior class that really had brought the program back, but we were confident that if we played to the level of our ability, that we could have a run at the championship anyway.
Right. And Coach, I believe you guys started off 3-0, and then there was a tough loss early in the season, the Sacred Heart. I think it was on a Monday afternoon as well, which was very weird to play a game on Monday, but with the weather and stuff, it just kind of worked out that way. But talk to me about that loss, because a lot of times teams, a loss could really, you know, hurt them and really kind of end their season early. But this team obviously didn't give up after that loss.
No, Sacred Heart they had a pretty good. I wouldn't say a very good team. They didn't go to the playoffs, but they got beat pretty good by Stratford in the playoffs. But they had some excellent running backs. The game went back and forth. We went ahead 7-0, and uh, we had a chance to go in and go up 14-0. We didn't score, and then they came back and scored, and they ended up winning, I believe, by a field goal. I think they won by 13-10, but I'm not 100% correct, or 10-7. I know it was a very, very tight game. And we lost in the last seconds. I know that.
And
And
ironically, Coach, I don't think they've beaten you since that '88 season. Am I right? I don't remember Ansonia losing to Sacred Heart since that last loss in '88.
I don't believe we've lost to them since then at
Yeah,
all.
and you didn't lose to them often. I mean, maybe that was only the second or third time they beat Ansonia. I don't recall them ever beating Ansonia too much.
I don't know if that's the only time they've beaten us since we went back in the NVL in 1976. I just I don't remember another Sacred Heart loss. When we had the real poor year in '86, we beat the five Waterbury schools. We lost everybody else, but we beat Sacred Heart that year, and all the other years I just don't remember a loss off the top of my head to them.
Right. And Coach, one kid on the Ansonia team who, like I said, I mean, he he was tough as nails. He was only about 5'6", but he could do everything, was Franny Hendricks. And I mean, talk about a kid who just was so explosive, and he wasn't the biggest kid in the world, but boy, I'll tell you, when he got to that outside corner, he was gone.
He did. He had great moves. He had a great ability to run back kicks. A matter of fact, in '88, we beat Shelton that year, won the state the double L title, I believe. We played Shelton down at Shelton in the second game of the year, and it was tied at halftime. And the kickoff was going into the end zone. We thought to start the second half, and we didn't want. We almost were saying leave it, let it go, let it go. He caught it at the 1 yard line and took it 99 yards for a touchdown. He had the uncanny ability to make great cuts in the open field. He probably only weighed about 145, 150 pounds, and he also had to play both ways for us. We would have loved to have gotten him out on defense, but he was just a gritty kid, and he played his heart out. And he was certainly one of the better backs in the state of Connecticut at the time.
Yeah, he definitely was. And another kid you just brought up recently, David D'Onofrio. And I'll tell you, Coach, I always say this. Sometimes as years go on, we tend to forget those tremendous Ansonia players. But he was, in my opinion, now, again, I didn't see the great teams in the 70s, but since I watched football in the 80s, he's one of the best players to ever put on an Ansonia uniform. He could do everything. I mean, offensively, defensively, I think he kicked as well. And the kid was just phenomenal.
He absolutely was. He had great hands, great instincts. He's a great leader. He would he would he would he would play to the last second of every single play. He was one of the best kids we've ever had to coach. And when Keith Gautowski went out to be operated on after 7 games, and for a while David went in a quarterback. And then we eventually moved him back out. He was just too valuable to have on the field as a potential receiver, running back. And Kevin Sharkey came in. But David D'Onofrio was one of the greatest all-around players we've ever had in Ansonia High School.
Yeah, he certainly was. And then, of course, you talked about Ramondo Stallings. And, I mean, what an asset he was to you guys. And, you know, you always feel good, Coach, whenever you see, especially in the Valley, somebody go on and get to play a little bit in the pros. Glennie Antrim got to play with the Patriots briefly. And then, you know, of course, we've seen Dan Orlowski. He got to play many years, even though he didn't always start. He was on Detroit for many years, then the Texans. But to see Ramondo, and he got to play with the San Diego Chargers, and he played quite a few years. That's always, you know, to me, it just goes to show you that a small town in the Valley, if you're good, you can make it.
Ramondo did a great job. He also played for the Bengals for his NFL career, and I believe he played 5 years in the NFL. So he had a real outstanding career there.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, Coach, anybody who talks to people involved with the NFL, you know how hard it is to make it. I mean, you could be a tremendous high school football player in your town, and you try to get into a big time college, it doesn't always materialize. So the fact that he played even more than 2 seasons in the NFL is just remarkable.
It certainly was, Mike. Definitely.
Yeah. So, Coach, talk to me about this. You guys go into week 6. You play Derby. The game it got rained out on a Saturday. You play them on a Sunday afternoon, and boy, that game went back and forth. Fran Hendricks right off the bat got a nice screen pass from Pelotowski and ran it for about 60 yards. You guys are up 7-0. Derby scored late in the second quarter to tie it up. I mean, did you guys think that was a game that you should have won, or do you think like it was just a matter of 2 great teams played great and one had to lose and one had to win?
I thought it was 2 very good teams were playing. If you remember, Derby went undefeated until they lost the last 2 games of the season to Seymour and to Shelton, and we had a chance to go further ahead. Kevin Sharkey made a 90-yard interception return for a touchdown, and it was called back because someone somewhere else on the field was called for face guarding a receiver, which was nowhere near the play at the time. But it was unfortunately came back, and Derby hung in there, and Derby was very gritty. They had some very tough kids, and we had an unfortunate fumble near the end, and Derby found a way to go in and score and win the game. And I give Derby all the credit. They were well coached. They did an excellent job then. But all along, we still believed that we had a shot to get into the playoffs. We had to still win out. We had to beat Naugatuck, who won the NVL title, because they beat Sacred Heart, and we had lost to Sacred Heart, so there was no playoff. But then we played Naugatuck on Thanksgiving and beat them pretty good. But I remember watching the Derby Seymour game up there on a Sunday afternoon, and Seymour had lost 1 game, I believe, at the time. They might have lost to Shelton, whom we had beaten. And uh, we knew that if Seymour could beat Derby, and then if Shelton would beat Derby, we had a real solid chance to outpoint Derby, even though our records were both would have been 8-2 and they would have beaten us. We would have gotten so many more points for beating Shelton, who definitely helped us out. So we we certainly believe we had a shot to get to the playoffs. Things had to go our way, and they did when Derby, unfortunately for Derby, lost the last two games, and we won our last four games. And we got, and in those days, the playoffs was only there were only two teams who were in the playoff, and it was us in New London again. And New London was number one in the state at the time and had many great players, but we were just happy to get back into the playoffs and knew we had a chance to win.
Yeah, and another key factor in that Derby game, Coach, which I think people forget as well, is I think he had Harold Bell wide open, and then his legs went out from under him. So as he was going to catch the ball, he lost his foot and got hurt, and that was a key play as well. Because if he catches that ball, you never know. I mean, if
Well,
nothing else,
I'm sure the Derby had a number of plays too that if something happened, they might have been more successful in the play, and
yeah.
they all played us at the end, and they deserved to win the game. But
Yeah, I remember too for Derby, Chris Anderson had a phenomenal game that day. Johnny Sherwin had a great game. And, Coach, I always said that it was ironic to me that only one time Derby and Ansonia met in the playoffs in the 80s because I always felt like 85, 87, and 88, you guys were going to play each other. And it just never worked out. Fitch lost to New London in '87 on Thanksgiving, and that got New London in. So Derby and Ansonia weren't able to play again. '85, you guys lose to Naugatuck, and that kind of helped Derby get into the playoffs. And then, of course, '88, Derby losing their last two out of three hurt them. So it was kind of a shame because I would have loved to see those two teams play another game one time in that stretch.
certainly would have been interesting, Mike. But we were happy we got in two of the three scenarios. Unfortunately, in '85, we did get beat by Naugatuck on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, but we at least got the opportunity the other two times, so we're somewhat pleased anyway.
And the thing about this coaching staff, Coach, you guys were always gutsy. You weren't afraid to play these younger kids. And I know Kevin Sharkey had a great year defensively, but he didn't always see a lot of offense. And then you guys put him into that quarterback position in a state championship game, which I thought took a lot of guts because, he didn't really have a ton of experience and he had to kind of go in there. Keith was hurt. And I mean, it paid off for you
Well,
guys. But I mean,
we actually put him in the Naugatuck game. He played the Naugatuck game as a quarterback. The game we
right.
had to get into the playoffs. And he did a great job. And we had an awful lot of confidence in him. We just knew that we needed David D'Onofrio to now be a running back and a wide receiver in order to increase our chances of scoring. And obviously, one of the most famous plays in Ansonia history was when Kevin Sharkey threw the ball to D'Onofrio in the playoff game to win the game. So it certainly worked out as best it possibly could for us.
And what a game that was because I think the Ansonia fans had just about given up, and no disrespect to them. I mean, listen, they're loyal fans, but they thought the game was over. They didn't think you guys were going to get the ball back, and then a lot of them were kind of exiting, and then Sharkey makes that unbelievable pass. He gets knocked down. I don't even think he saw the touchdown. And then you have a
No,
wide open.
He was on his back. David ran. It was a great call by Jim Del Volpe, and David ran a sideline and up pattern, and the cornerback bit on the sideline pattern, and David ran the up route on him, and David was 10 yards behind him, and Kevin got hit just as he threw the ball, but he made a perfect pass, and David caught it and put us ahead. We were behind 14-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
We tried to keep telling the kids we had been there before. Very similarly, we had been behind. It was just so unique because we were behind Seymour at halftime in 1979, 14-0 and came back to win the game. And they had the best running back in the state in Edwin Essen, and we were able to shut him down in the second half. And when we played New London in '88, they had the best running back in the state in Jamal Johnson, and we were able to shut him down in the second half. So both times was a 14-0 deficit, and we rallied to come back and win the game. So we were pretty fortunate.
And I think one of the best things about this whole playoff format when they started it in 1976 is it's given teams chances to build new rivalries. And Ansonia and New London had quite a rivalry that started in 1987. And I believe even in 2006 or 2007, you would play them again. I mean, so over the years, it was a great rivalry. I think of the 87 and 88 games, the 91 and 92 games. So that's one thing that if you're a football fan was really cool is you got to see this new rivalry between Ansonia and New London, and they really brought out the best in each other.
No, the Ansonia New London rivalry, and then the Bloomfield Ansonia rivalry, the
Yeah,
more or less run together with us. So we've had a lot of interesting games, played a lot of outstanding players on the New London team and on the Bloomfield team. So it makes for one hell of a rivalry, as you say.
yeah, it really does. So, Coach, it's kind of funny back then in the '80s. I mean, Derby and Ansonia, it was always heartbreaking when when one team beat the other, and it kind of stayed with you the whole offseason. So you guys lose to them in '88, and it's crushing, but you win that state title. So it's like the players didn't beat Derby, but they got a state title. So it was almost like it wasn't a consolation prize because I think looking back, you're gonna take the loss to Derby if it means you get a state title.
Mike, we've been to that. When that's happened before, I guarantee you, Mike, that loss to Derby was 100% forgotten when we came off that field in New Britain. It was yesterday's news, and I'm sure if Derby had lost us and won a state title, they would feel the same way. Winning a state championship trumps any other loss, no matter whatever rivalry you have with somebody, whether it's Derby, whether it's Naugatuck, and we've lost a couple of bitter games to Naugatuck and going on to win state championships. And I don't think the coaches or the players would ever have traded a win against Derby or a win against Naugatuck in that particular year in a loss in the state championship game. It's just a state championship game. A state championship game is an animal in and of itself. It's when you've been there, whether it's one time or 32 times, it's just something special.
Yeah, it really is, and I mean, really nothing can compare to it. So, Coach, you guys go into that '89 season, and you had a lot of players returning, so you knew it was going to be a special season. But let me ask you, as freshman coach, how was that team as freshmen? How did those kids do freshman year when you coached them?
Very interestingly, that was the freshman team during the Morel year, which was so much of a disaster for us. That freshman team went undefeated. It whacked every team and whacked them pretty good. Um, and so we were very fortunate to get the players that we had from that team and stay with the program, even though it was in disarray at the time. And also a player moved from Derby who became an all-state tackle for us, who uh, really was one hell of a high school football player. And that was Michael Diudo. So we caught a very good break when he moved to Ansonia, and we had Kevin. That was Kevin Sharkey was a junior then, but he had an exceptional year in
Yeah,
'89. Dennis Tinney was a great back.
and
We had
even Robbie Clark stepped up on defense that year
Rob
as well.
Clark.
Yeah,
Rob Clark was young then. He was a young player. He was only a sophomore then,
yeah, yeah.
and he became a tremendous player. But we were fortunate. We had a great offensive line. We had Kevin was and Chris Kinnebrew was the guard the year before. He played a running back for me as a freshman. I remember I argued very strenuously that he should be a running back again as a fullback. I thought he'd be a great blocker for Kevin in the eye, but also he ran for over 1,000 yards as about a 270-pound fullback. So he was almost unstoppable running up the middle for 5 to 10 yard gains. And when Kevin had Chris in front of him, he was known as Bull. When Bull was blocking for Kevin, it was pretty tough to get a good shot at Kevin because you had to go through Bull to make the hit. So we had a lot of ability to move the ball with that team.
And you talked about Diudo. He went to Derby his freshman year. So, you guys didn't have him on that freshman team, and yet that freshman team still went undefeated. And that just tells you how talented a group you had as freshmen. And it carried over to their senior year because, you know, in years past, teams gave Ansonia good games. They may not always beat them, but they gave them good games. we're going to talk about a few of these games, but really the only real sweat you guys had was on Thanksgiving. That's Sunday against Naugatuck. But otherwise, it just seemed like maybe as coaches you didn't think so, but as somebody watching it, it seemed like it was very easy that year. But just talk about, was there a lot of confidence going into that fall that you guys were going to be special?
There was, and especially when we went through the scrimmages, we scrimmaged a very good West Haven team and whacked them around pretty good. We 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 scrimmaged, I believe we scrimmaged Seymour then, and
I think
we just
Platt too, right? Didn't you scrimmage Platt of Meriden or somebody
we,
that year?
I believe you're correct on that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we were just playing very well. As I said, once 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 Kevin started running the ball the way he was capable of, uh, and Keith Politowski had come back from his surgery, and he did an excellent job as a quarterback. He was intelligent. He really understood the game, and he ended up going to Yale and being a hell of a baseball player there. But um, we we had a lot of very, very good football players and some exceptional football players.
Yeah, and I mean a great win against Holy Cross to start the season. But I remember the week going into Shelton that even Coach Branca thought that his team was headed in the right direction. He really liked how they played in week one, and he said he felt like this was going to be a big time game. And I mean, Kevin just dominated that game. I mean, he had a phenomenal game. I think you guys ended up winning 38-15, something like that. I mean, it was never in doubt. And I right there told me that this team's going to be scary because anytime you beat a team like Shelton like that, you have a good football team.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You mentioned the Naugatuck game. We were dominating the game. We just couldn't score. And interestingly enough, we played on Sunday. And on Saturday, we had gone down and we saw Stratford play Bunnell. And Stratford had been number one. We've been chasing them the whole year. We were behind them. We were second. And we were down there, and so many people were there rooting very hard for Bunnell. And Bunnell upset Stratford. And interesting enough, a lot of Bunnell people came up to watch the game on Sunday. And we hung in there. We were behind 7-0 in Naugatuck, and we were down there. Just finally, we scored and tied it up. I believe Duncan Delavolpe caught a touchdown pass, and then in the fourth quarter, Kevin went in on a sweep for a touchdown. We really thought that they weren't going to score again if we could get the second touchdown, and once we did, you never are totally confident, but we felt a lot better, and we really had controlled the game for 80% of the time. But with Naugatuck, you got to still be aware that something could happen. But once we beat them, we knew we had a run then at number one, and then we certainly had a big playoff game against Weston and won pretty big.
Yeah, and Coach, talk to me about like when this happens. It's happened quite a bit over the years. It either rains or it snows on Thanksgiving, and you don't know if you're going to be able to play Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And keep in mind, most of the time you get that week off to preparate, and then you're waiting for that game to come, and then you got to wait an additional 2 days. How hard is it to keep these players focused when, I mean, they're ready to play a game? They've practiced enough. I mean, is it a bit of a letdown sometimes for them?
Uh, First of all, uh, Tom Brock and I will talk. The two of us love Thanksgiving football more than anything. You want to play it. We both were high school football players, of course, as are 90% of the staff. Uh, and you want to play on Thanksgiving morning. You don't want to play any other time. And for a while there, we played so many times on Friday, Saturday. This was on Sunday. I mean, it's harder now. They really, first of all, there's more fields with artificial turf, and there's many more teams playing, which I think is a shame for teams. Some teams play Tuesday night, some teams play Wednesday night. I would never want to play the night before Thanksgiving in a football game unless we were forced to. But the problem is that the first playoff game is the following Tuesday. So if there's a lot of rain, if there's a lot of postponements on Thursday, they would probably move the following playoff game to a Wednesday. But then you'd be playing Wednesday, Sunday. So that's a difficult part with in those. They didn't start the Tuesday playoff game until 1995, but it seemed like there were just so many Thanksgiving postponements over the years for rain and sometimes for snow. And it is one of the great disappointments of the year when you don't get to play on Thanksgiving, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the feel is not the same, especially like if you play on a Friday night, you're not going
Yeah.
to get the same crowd where you always get a nice crowd on Thursdays, and the feel is just great. And especially if you win, I mean, it kind of makes your whole Thanksgiving, and it kind of, breaks up the day a little bit because most of the time you're waiting to eat, and sometimes you won't eat till 3 o'clock. So this gives you like that little, icebreaker before you get there. So when you don't play on Thanksgiving, I just feel like it's disappointing, not only for the fans, but really for the players, because I think players should be able to experience that.
Well, yeah, Mike, one of the worst feelings is to lose on Thanksgiving and then go try and eat. But thankfully, we've had a pretty good run against Naugatuck, especially the last since Jack and Tom came in. I think we're 31-4 or something like that. So we've been very fortunate to either win on Thanksgiving or win the next day if it's rained out. But there's nothing. It's hard to lose on Thanksgiving. We lost a couple of bitter games on Thanksgiving, um, and I I just know what that day was like when you lose, and it's not good.
Yeah, exactly. And you talked about Chris Kinnebrew, and it's no surprise. I mean, Kevin and Dennis are tremendous runners, and they had a great year that year. But I mean, when you have a guy like that in front of you, blocking for you like that, it just makes things so much easier for the backs. They're able to, do what they want to do because you got that guy who just could block as good as anybody. So, I mean, a lot of people don't realize, he was just as invaluable as anybody in that backfield.
Oh, he certainly was, and he actually even went down and played some nose guard for the University of Arkansas.
Arkansas, yeah.
He got hurt a little bit down there, but he was a very talented football player. He wasn't just a big guy; he was a talented kid. He had balance. He understood the game. He was a special player and a special person.
Yeah, he really was. And I mean, we talk about Kevin's season. I mean, both sides of the ball, Kevin had a great year. He had 7 interceptions on defense. He had 29 touchdowns on offense, which, and nowadays with the spreads and stuff, I know that players get a lot more stats. But in 1989, it was hard to score that many touchdowns because a lot of times either you're in close games or you're way ahead, that a lot of these guys come out after the half, so they don't get to put up a lot of the numbers that they might put up if they played a whole game. So it's a credit to him to have the season he had that year.
It certainly was. He was as good a football player as it was in Connecticut that year.
Yeah. Coach, one of the things I always liked about your program is you guys, you were big on the halfback pass, the flea flicker, and stuff like that. And then, I mean, there was the game against Derby where you guys used Pelatowski as a receiver on one of your plays. I think it was a 2-point conversion. You kind of did a little flea flicker. And I think I'm trying to remember if it was Dennis who threw it to Pelatowski, but it was for a 2-point conversion. And I mean, you guys always kind of utilized the flea flicker to halfback pass. Tell me how important back then it was to run plays like that, because a lot of teams would do it over the years.
I think it's very important. We had a lot of times we had running backs who were very talented. Also, when David D'Onofrio was running the ball, he could throw the ball. Kevin could throw it as well as anybody as a running back. And then we moved up into the 90s, and we had receivers like we also got down to running the double pass many times. We run the tight end screen double pass. John Hunt, when he was there, he could throw it about 50 yards, the ball. So, plus trick plays, I think kids like trick plays because they're excited to see them put in, and they always hope that we can run it in the game and just to see what might happen. But even on our level as a freshman, we have thrown more tight end screens, more tight end screen double passes, more halfback passes than you could possibly believe. But it's a lot of fun.
And you talk about trick plays. The state championship game. Now, I think you guys had a comfortable lead, but you guys did a fumble Ruski in one of those plays. I'll never forget. Which I think you're the last team I saw do that at the high school level. And I mean, stuff like that is a credit to the athletes that these kids are and how well they execute stuff, because you don't have a lot of time to think, and you have to do that, efficiently, or it's not going to work. And it just was impressive to see how not just the fumble Ruski, but how well these kids did everything you guys as coaches asked of them.
Well, I think they really pay even more attention to the special plays because they know how important that special play is going to be. I mean, we one of our touchdowns this year against Bloomfield was a halfback pass.
Yeah.
We halfback pass for a touchdown, and it was a big touchdown at the time. So those plays are just so important to your offense.
I think we got a good indicator of why so many teams decided over the years to get turf, and it was true in this playoff game because you guys played at Jestow Field, I think, against Weston, and it snowed like crazy that day, but there was no need to postpone the game because you played on turf, so it wasn't going to affect anybody. So it's one of those situations where, uh, you know, the snow actually helped. I think you guys still would have won that game by a lot, but I think your kids knew how to just like play in tough conditions because from the start of that game, I mean, you could just see the first offensive series that Weston had no shot at winning that game. And you guys, I think you beat them 44-0. And I mean, it seemed like you guys played a perfect game from start to finish.
Well, the fact that we just gone into number one in the state meant an awful lot because we had been chasing it all year, and we knew that if we won and won significantly, we would keep it. So that was the carrot before the horse, and we went out and we got it.
Yeah, and I mean, Kinnebrew had a tremendous game that game. I think he was the MVP of that game, and everybody, like I said, the line, the secondary, everybody just played great that game. I mean, those kids knew that the prize was in front of them. You talked about number one, and they just kind of went into that game and they said, you know what, we're not losing this game. It's going to be over by the half. And I mean, how important, Coach, was it for you guys as coaches to get that second number one? Because you gotten the one in 83, but I know you wanted that second one. How important was it for you guys?
It was important for us, but it was even more important for the kids because every class is different. And the championship in '83 was nice, but for the kids in '89, it didn't mean it meant something for Ansonia's tradition. But they had a chance to be the number one team in the state, and it meant so much to them. And we were just happy they had the opportunity.
What's funny, Coach, is when you see Jack Hunt coaching on the sidelines, he's very intense and he doesn't panic, but he gets a little nervous sometimes when a team's making a big drive and stuff, and he doesn't really relax until the game's over. But it's so funny to see him when the game's over, or if it's off the field. I remember him making a comment. He said, New London, we know we're number one, but if you want to play us, we'll play you in the parking lot. And I
Right.
mean, I'll just never forget that. And that's one thing about Jack too, is like he could be hard on his players and he could push them and he could be demanding, but he always believed in them and he would put those players up against any team he coached against. He really had a lot of confidence in the players he coached.
He most certainly did, and he exuded that confidence to the players too.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what was it like when you opened that newspaper on a Tuesday morning? I mean, I'm sure you guys found out on Monday that you were going to be number one, but you opened that uh, paper on Tuesday morning. It had to be nice to see everybody's picture in there with the number ones up, especially I think the Sentinel took a picture of it. That had to be a great feeling for you guys as coaches and for those kids.
It certainly was. It's something we thought we had a shot at coming into the season. We thought we had a real opportunity to run the table if we stayed healthy, and everything fell into place. We knew we caught a great break when St. Joe's they had an excellent team, and Notre Dame High School beat them early in the year, and then we were chasing Stratford, as we said, and then when they lost to Bunnell on that Saturday after Thanksgiving, the door was open for us, and we went right through it.
Right. So, Coach, next time we're on, we're going to talk about the 1990 season. But interestingly enough, those kids you had as freshmen in 1990, I think that it was the James Leahy group and stuff like that. They were another team, and we'll get into it more. But they were another team that I thought was a great Ansonia team who just unfortunately ran into a tough Naugatuck team. But again, so much talent on that team. Those kids as freshmen. I mean, did you sense that when they became seniors, they were going to be special?
Well, that was That was Kevin Sharkey's. 1990 was Kevin
Well,
Sharkey's.
I'm talking about the freshman team, though, that you
Right, but
coached.
no, do you mean the 1990 team when they were freshmen? That was Kevin. That would have
No,
been Kevin Sharkey.
I'm talking about the 1990 freshman you
Oh, the
coached.
1990
Yeah,
freshman,
yeah,
which was a team in 1993. The
right. Yeah. So
1993.
I mean,
Yeah, that team had some tough kids. I don't know if we were as talented in the skill positions with that team as we had been with some of the other teams. That was one of the freshman teams that honestly struggled for a while in 1990. So we weren't quite as strong in the skilled areas as we had been with some of the other teams at that time.
right. Well, Coach, we're going to talk about the 1990 Ansonia team, another great team that I thought was very underrated, and we will do that next time. We'll talk a little bit about 91. But Coach, as always, I appreciate you coming on, and congratulations again. I heard so many great things about that banquet, and I really, the thing I heard the most was is just how special it was for the kids. And like I said, I think what you guys do, dedicating your time all the time and going out of your way to make this program successful and being there for those kids, I really do applaud you. So
Well,
congratulations again.
well, so many people really worked hard. Superintendent Tabacco, obviously Mayor Cassetti, Coach Brockett, they really did a tremendous job for the kids this year, and we're very fortunate to have people like that involved with the Ansonia football. I can tell you, we were very lucky.
Well, Coach, again, congratulations, and we'll talk soon. And thank you again for doing this.
Thank you, Mike. Great to see you as always. Have a
You
happy
as well.
Easter.
You as well, Coach. And that's Coach John Sponheimer. This was Spooney's Scrapbook. I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.